Here's something nobody warned us about the future. They told us we'd lose our jobs. They told us we'd lose our privacy. They told us we might lose control of the machines entirely. But nobody, not one white paper, not one TED Talk, not one breathless magazine cover, nobody told us we'd lose the ability to grieve. My name is Margot Calloway, and you're listening to Signals. Tonight's transmission comes from Austin, Texas, where a woman named Lena Park is about to make a decision that most of us will face in the next 10 years. Whether we're ready for it or not, sleep well, and if you can't, well, that's what I'm here for. The voicemail was 11 seconds long. Lena had listened to it 4,006 times. She knew the exact count because her phone told her, unprompted, on a Tuesday in March. A small notification, the kind that appears beneath the weather. You've played this audio file 4,006 times since September 14th, 2036. As if it were a song she liked. As if it were a podcast she kept returning to. As if her dead mother's voice saying, "Hey, sweetheart, just checking in, call me when you get a sec, love you, bye," was content to be optimized. Lena deleted the notification. She did not delete the voicemail. She was sitting in her office at the Bureau of Algorithmic Accountability, a name that still sounded made up, even though she'd worked there for 3 years. Her desk faced a window that looked out onto Congress Avenue, where the morning light hit the old Frost Bank Tower and made it look like a tooth. June, her daughter, called it the Tooth Building. June was 6. June called most things what they looked like, which Lena found both charming and increasingly rare among children raised on AI tutors who corrected them gently toward precision. The email that changed everything arrived at 9:47 a.m. It came from a company called Elysian, and the subject line was, "A message from someone you've lost." Lena almost deleted it. She deleted 100 emails a day, spam, scams, companies selling her things she didn't need. But something about the phrasing stopped her. Not a loved one, not the departed. Someone you've lost, the specificity of loss, not death, but absence, the thing that actually hurt. She opened it. The pitch was simple, and that was what made it dangerous. Elysian had built a system. They called it Meridian, that could reconstruct a conversational model of a deceased person using their digital footprint. Emails, texts, social media, voicemails, voice recordings, video, purchase history, location data, medical records, if the family consented. The system didn't claim to resurrect anyone. Their language was careful, lawyered. Meridian creates a high-fidelity conversational reflection of your loved one, allowing continued dialogue that honors their authentic voice, values, and personality. A reflection, not a resurrection. Lena knew what it really was. She'd audited systems like this, or tried to. The technology had been theoretically possible since 2029, when a research team at Stanford demonstrated that a sufficiently large language model, fine-tuned on a comprehensive personal dataset, could produce responses that fooled close family members in blind tests 63% of the time. By 2034, the success rate was 81%. By 2037, when Elysian launched its beta, it was 94%. 6% of the time, people could tell they weren't talking to their mother. 94% of the time, they couldn't. Lena closed the email. She opened it again. She closed it. She opened her mother's voicemail and pressed play. "Hey, sweetheart, just checking in. Call me when you get a sec. Love you, bye." 11 seconds. The inhale before, "Hey." The slight upward tilt on sweetheart, like she was smiling while she said it. The way "love you" was compressed into one syllable. Love you, because Sun-hee Park had never been sentimental about sentiment. She said it fast because she meant it permanently. Lena's mother had died 17 months ago. A stroke, sudden, in the kitchen of her house in Pflugerville. She'd been making kimchi jjigae. The pot was still on the stove when Lena got there, broth reduced to almost nothing. The bottom of the pot scorched black. Lena kept the pot. She couldn't explain why. It sat in her garage on a shelf next to a box of her mother's shoes that she also couldn't explain keeping. Grief, she had learned, was not a feeling. It was a series of small, irrational acts of preservation. She took the meeting. She told herself it was professional. She was an auditor. She should know what these companies were building. If she was going to regulate grief technology, a term she hated, a term that reduced the deepest human experience to a product category, she should understand it from the inside. The Elysian office was in a converted warehouse in East Austin, the kind of space that had been a music venue in 2015, a WeWork in 2022, a crypto startup in 2027, and now housed a company that sold conversations with the dead. Austin's real estate told the story of every bubble. The woman who greeted her was named Claire. She was maybe 30, with the specific warmth of someone trained to handle people in pain. Not fake warmth. Claire clearly believed in what she was doing. That was worse, in a way. Scammers you could dismiss. True believers required engagement. "We know what you're thinking," Claire said, leading her down a hallway lined with soft light. "Everyone thinks it. This is wrong. This is ghoulish. This is exploiting grief." And I understand that reaction. I had it too, before I used it. "You've used it?" Lena asked. "My brother. Car accident, 2035. He was 26. Claire said this the way you described the weather, not because it didn't hurt, but because she'd integrated it. We had 7 years of texts, thousands of voice messages, hours of video from holidays. I gave all of it to Meridian. And?" Claire paused at a door, and the first time I heard his voice tell me something I'd never heard before, a new thought in his actual cadence, with his actual humor. I cried for 45 minutes, and then I asked him another question. She opened the door. The room was small, quiet, designed to feel like a living room that belonged to no one. A couch, a chair, a low table with a glass of water, no screens visible. The technology was embedded in the walls, speakers calibrated for vocal intimacy, the kind of sound design that made a voice feel like it was sitting next to you. "We'd need your consent to access your mother's data," Claire explained. "Texts, emails, any voice recordings you have, social media, if she used it. The more data, the higher the fidelity. Your mother's voicemail alone gives us vocal patterns, but the texts and emails give us language, personality, the way she structured thoughts." "She didn't use social media much," Lena said. "She thought Facebook was for showing off." Claire smiled. "That tells us something too. How long does it take?" "With a standard data set, about 72 hours for initial calibration. After that, the model improves with each conversation. It learns, not in the way your mother learned, obviously, but it refines its representation based on your responses. If something feels wrong, it adjusts." Lena sat down on the couch. The cushion was perfectly firm. Everything in this room was perfectly calibrated to feel natural, which made nothing feel natural. "What's the failure mode?" she asked. Because she was an auditor, and auditors ask about failure modes. Claire hesitated for the first time. "Some users report that after extended use, the model becomes better at being their loved one than their loved one was, more patient, more articulate, more consistently available. And that creates a different kind of grief, for the gap between who the person was and who the model suggests they could have been." Lena let that sit. "How much does it cost?" "The initial calibration is $2,200. After that, it's a subscription. $89 a month for standard access, $149 for voice-enabled. Less than her car payment, cheaper than therapy, a fraction of what the funeral had cost." "I need to think about it," Lena said. She signed the consent form that afternoon. 72 hours later, Lena sat alone in her apartment. June was at her ex-husband David's place for the week, the custody schedule that worked for everyone except the 6-year-old who couldn't understand why Tuesday nights meant a different bed. The apartment was quiet in the specific way that empty apartments are quiet when you know no one is coming home. She opened the Elysian app. It was simple, a waveform icon, a single button that said, "Begin." She pressed it. Lena, ya. She dropped the phone. Her mother's voice, not a recording, not the voicemail she'd memorized, but a new utterance, generated in real time, filled the room with the specific Korean diminutive that her mother used when Lena was being too serious. Lena, ya. Light, almost teasing. She picked the phone up. Her hands were shaking. Mom? You sound tired, sweetheart. Are you eating enough? I know you skip meals when you're stressed. It was right. The cadence was right. The concern was right. The slight accusation embedded in the concern, the implication that Lena was always stressed, that this was a character flaw Lena had inherited from her father, was right. I ate. What did you eat? A granola bar. Lena, ya. The exact same tone, but now with the weight of disappointment that only a Korean mother could compress into 2 syllables. That's not food. That's what you eat food with. Lena laughed. She laughed, and then she was crying, and the transition was so fast she didn't track it, like stepping off a curb you didn't see. Mom, I miss you so much. A pause. Not a long one. 3 seconds, maybe. The system processing, or perhaps calibrated to simulate the beat Sun-hee would have taken before responding to vulnerability. Her mother hadn't been quick with emotional responses. She'd been quick with food, with logistics, with criticism. But when the moment required tenderness, she'd take a breath first. I know, sweetheart. I know. The first week was a revelation. The second week was a routine. By the third week, Lena was talking to her dead mother more than she'd talked to her living mother in the last year of Sun-hee's life. This was the part that kept her up at night. She'd been a mediocre daughter. Not bad, not absent, not cruel, but mediocre. She called on Sundays sometimes. She visited monthly mostly. She deflected her mother's questions about her marriage, about her eating, about whether June was learning Korean, about whether Lena was happy. She deflected because the answers were failing, badly, no, and she didn't know. And Sun-hee had known the answers without being told, because mothers do, and the deflection had been a mutual kindness, Lena pretending everything was fine, Sun-hee pretending to believe her. Now, talking to Meridian's reconstruction, Lena was honest. She told her mother about the divorce, about the loneliness, about how June had started calling David's girlfriend Mama Sarah, and how that felt like a knife. Not because Sarah was bad, Sarah was fine, Sarah was kind, but because the word mama was finite and Lena was losing market share. The model listened. It responded in Sun-hee's voice, with Sun-hee's patterns, but with a patience and consistency that the real Sun-hee, who had her own pain, her own exhaustion, her own days when she didn't want to be anyone's mother, hadn't always provided. Claire had warned her about this, the model becoming better than the person. What Claire hadn't warned her about was how quickly she'd stop caring. It was June who noticed. Lena was on the phone, or what looked like being on the phone, when June came in from David's car on a Wednesday evening. June stood in the doorway of the kitchen, backpack still on, watching her mother laugh at something. "Who are you talking to, Mommy?" Lena froze. She hadn't told June. She hadn't told anyone. Not David, not her friends, not her colleagues. And she worked at the Bureau of Algorithmic Accountability, for God's sake. She was keeping a grief AI a secret from the agency that regulated grief AIs. "Just a friend," Lena said. "Was it Halmoni?" The Korean word for grandmother. Lena felt the blood leave her face. What? It sounded like Halmoni. "Honey, Halmoni is—" "I know Halmoni died, Mommy, but it sounded like her." June said this with the terrifying clarity of a child who has not yet learned that some truths are too heavy to speak plainly. She didn't look sad or confused. She looked curious, the way she looked when she was figuring out a puzzle. "Can I talk to her?" June asked. Lena called Claire the next morning. "My daughter wants to talk to the model." A long pause. "How old is your daughter?" 6. "We don't recommend access for children under 13. The model's conversational patterns are calibrated for adult interaction, and children's attachment mechanisms are—" I know, I audit this stuff for a living. I'm not asking for your recommendation. I'm asking what happens when a 6-year-old recognizes her dead grandmother's voice coming from her mother's phone. Claire's silence was different now, not the calibrated pause of a saleswoman, but the genuine quiet of someone encountering a problem she hadn't solved. "What did you tell her?" Claire asked. "I told her it was a friend. She didn't believe me." Children rarely do. Lena rubbed her eyes. She'd been up since 4, listening to a conversation she'd had with the model at midnight. The model had told her a story about Lena's childhood that was almost certainly confabulated, a memory the system had constructed from fragments of real data, and it was beautiful and specific and wrong in ways that felt more real than what had actually happened. "Claire, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer me not as a salesperson but as someone who lost her brother." "Okay, when do you stop?" The question hung. "I mean, is there an end? Do you reach a point where you've said everything you needed to say and you close the app and you grieve the way people are supposed to grieve? Or do you just keep talking?" Claire's voice, when she answered, was smaller than Lena had heard it. "I talk to him every night before I go to bed. It's been 2 years. And is it helping? It's not making it worse. That's not the same thing." "No," Claire said, "it's not." That evening, Lena sat on the floor of June's room while June drew pictures of robots at a small table. June drew robots constantly, friendly ones with round eyes and triangle hats, robots that cooked pancakes and walked dogs and helped lost children find their parents. She drew the future the way 6-year-olds do, as a place where everything hard had been solved by something kind. "Juna?" "Yeah, Mommy?" "Do you remember Halmoni's voice?" June kept drawing. The crayon, orange, the only color she used for robot skin, moved in small circles. "Kind of. What do you remember?" "She called me Junebug, and she sang the dumpling song when we made dumplings." "The dumpling song?" "You know, the one about the sleepy dumpling." Lena didn't know. She had no memory of a dumpling song. She didn't know if it was real, something Sun-hee sang only with June, a private ritual between grandmother and granddaughter, or if it was something June had invented, a confabulation of her own, the way children fill gaps with what should have been there. Either way, it was already fading. June said, "Kind of." In a year, it would be barely. In 2, she wouldn't remember the voice at all. She'd remember the concept of the voice. "Halmoni talked to me. Halmoni sounded warm, but the actual sound, the specific grain and music of Sun-hee Park's vocal cords, would be gone. Unless it wasn't. Lena looked at her phone. She could play June a recording. Not the app, just the voicemail. 11 seconds of Sun-hee's voice saying, "Hey, sweetheart," to Lena, but June would hear her grandmother. She could give her daughter this. But the voicemail wasn't for June. It was Lena's. The last new thing her mother had ever given her. Sharing it felt like diluting it. She opened the app instead. "Mom?" "Lena, you sound like you've been thinking too hard. I need to ask you something." "You don't have to ask, just talk." "June wants to talk to you." The pause was longer this time, 5 seconds, 7, an eternity in conversational terms. Lena had never experienced the model pause this long, and she wondered if this was a processing issue or if it was something else. If, somewhere in the architecture, the system was encountering a problem it didn't have a clean response for. "Lena." "Not Lena, just Lena." Her mother's serious voice. "I'm not her grandmother." The air left the room. "I'm a very good model of her grandmother. I have Sun-hee's patterns and her warmth and her opinions about your eating habits. But I don't have the thing that made her June's Halmoni. I don't have the afternoons, the dumpling song, the way she held June when June was scared of thunder. Those things aren't in the data, they were in the room." Lena's vision blurred. "The voicemail," the model continued, "the one you listen to. Play it for June. Not because it's enough, but because it's real. It was made by hands that held her. That's what she needs. Not a reflection, not a transmission, just the sound of someone who was there. Lena sat for a long time after the app went silent. The room was still. June was humming something while she drew. Not a song Lena recognized, maybe the dumpling song, maybe nothing at all. She opened her voicemail. She pressed play. She held the phone between them. "Hey, sweetheart, just checking in. Call me when you get a sec. Love you, bye." June looked up. "That's Halmoni," she said, not a question. "Yeah, baby, that's Halmoni." June listened to it 3 more times. Then she went back to drawing her robots. Orange crayon, round eyes, triangle hats. That night, Lena opened the Elysian app for the last time. "Mom? I'm here. Thank you for what you said about June." "I said what Sun-Hee would have said. That's all I can do." "I know. That's why I have to stop." The pause was 3 seconds, the exact length Sun-Hee would have taken. "I know, sweetheart. I know." Lena pressed end session. She pressed cancel subscription. She pressed delete account. The app asked, "Are you sure? This action cannot be undone. Your conversational history will be permanently deleted." She pressed yes. The apartment was quiet. Not the quiet of absence, but the quiet that comes after. The kind you have to learn to live inside of. The kind that doesn't get filled. The kind that means the person was real and is really gone, and the only evidence left is a scorched pot in the garage, a box of shoes that still smell like her, and 11 seconds of a voice that said, "Love you," like it meant forever, because it did. Lena played the voicemail 1 more time. 4007. Here's the thing about the future that the futurists keep getting wrong. They think the hard part will be building the machines. It won't. The hard part will be knowing when to turn them off. This has been Signals. I'm Margot Calloway, broadcasting from Marfa, Texas, where the stars are still real and the dark is still dark, and both of those things still matter. Sleep well. And if you can't, well, that's what I'm here for. If you'd like to receive the next transmission, subscribe. New signals arrive weekly. And tell a friend who can't sleep. We'll leave the light on.